Hey guys, welcome to Chapter 3, Section 3. And this section is going to be all about HTML forms and the new form elements and input types and different functionality that comes with forms in HTML5. Not all major browsers support the new form elements. However, you can start using them. If they're not supported, they'll just be used as regular text fields. And what's new with forms in HTML5 is the input types, which is very cool, probably the best feature, the best new thing about HTML5 and forms. And we also have new tags, and we have new list elements. Now there's quite a few new input types at the moment. But before in HTML4 all we had was the input text, password, checkbox, radio, and a couple others. But now we have the color, range, search. We have different date pickers, and email, URL. So I'm going to go through these real quick in this slideshow, and then the second part of the section will actually put this to work in our project. So the first one up we have is the new input field, email. And the new email input type allows the form to validate an email address without any use of JavaScript. Now in the past, if you wanted to validate an email, make sure that it's an email address going in, you would need to use JavaScript or some server-side processing just to check and see if it is an actual email address, and it would take a decent amount of code, but this makes it extremely easy. All you have to do is use the type email. Usually you'd have text or whatever, but if you use the type email, it's going to validate it for you right then and there. Alright, the next one we have is color, and that's another one that if you wanted to use before, you'd have to use some pretty heavy JavaScript. And this is as simple as using the word color in the type attribute of the input field, and you'll get a little box where you can choose the color. And we have a date field. Again, no JavaScript needed. We'd have a pop-up calendar to select the date. Now range is another cool one. It gives us control for entering a number whose exact value is not important. So it's basically a little slider control that you would slide to get the values, and we'll be implementing these different input types in the programming part of this section. In usage, you'd have the type range, and then you could actually specify a minimum and then a maximum, and you'd have a slider that would go in between those ranges. Very cool. Okay, so next we have the TEL, the tel input, which is used for a telephone number. So it should, if the field isn't a valid telephone number, you'd get a pop-up saying that. Time is another one like date. You can select a time or enter a time. URL, this is used to define a field for entering a link. If it's not in a link, it won't go through. You'll have a little message that pops up. And that's the last one that we're going to talk about. Now we have some new form elements, and there's three big ones. I'm not going to go through them in detail because they can get a little advanced, and I really don't see where I can fit them into the project. But first we have the data list tag, or the data list form element, and it specifies a list of predefined options for an input element. Now this is different than a select tag or a select list where you click an arrow and a drop down would pop up and you'd select one. This is different. This is an actual regular text field, and as you type, it's used as an autocomplete. So if you have a certain value in the list and they start typing, then it'll pop up. Like say, I don't know, say it was a location input and you typed B. If we had Boston in the in the list of options, then Boston would pop up and they could select it without having to type the rest. So pretty cool. It's use the input elements list attribute to bind it together with data list. And it's a little hard to explain, but I'm going to show you in the next section, in the programming part of this section, how this works. And actually, I can show you right here. This is an example. So we'd have an input list. We'd use the list element attribute, excuse me, of browsers, and then we'd have a data list with the ID of browsers, and then we'd have our options. So if in this text someone types, they type FIR, then Firefox will actually pop up. So it's an autocomplete. It's used for simplicity and to just make things easier for the user. Next we have the keygen form element, which is pretty advanced. It's a way to authenticate users, client-side way to authenticate users. You'd probably want to use something else as well, maybe some PHP or some kind of server-side programming. But it specifies a key pair of generator field in a form. When the form is submitted, two keys are generated. One is private and then one is public. And then the private key is stored locally and the public key is sent to the server. So it does have some server activity. I haven't used this yet. It looks pretty neat, but it looks a little advanced. Here we have an example. We have a form going to a demo.php file using the get method. So we have a user, we'd have a text field and have the name, and then we'd have encryption with a keygen tag and the name security, and then the submit button. So I'm not going to get too deep into that. And the next thing we have is the output tag, which performs a calculation and it would show the result in an output element. And here we have an example of that. It's a little complex. We have the on input attribute with some little bit of JavaScript, and we provide the range. I'm not going to have an example for this in this section, but we might revisit it in chapter 4 or 5. So that's the gist of it. All the really cool input types. Now we're going to get into our project. We're going to go to the Blue Developer Directory project and transfer our current form into an HTML5 form.